Ha, not bloody likely. I tried to spur my camel on to move faster. Anger flared in his eyes. He tried to push himself up, to get to his feet. He actually managed to raise himself up a few inches. For a moment, he remained like this, a fallen titan rebelling against his fate. Prometheus about to be bound, then his strength gave way and he collapsed to the ground in a heap. No, Mr. Ambrose. As if in triumph, the sandstorm gave a ravenous howl, and a gust of sand blasted between us. His form faded into the whirling mass of 0.0024803-inch pebbles and vanished from sight. Trapped. No. My heart almost stopped. There wasn't a trace of Mr. Ambrose left. None. The sickly, biting mist of stone around me, dark brown by now and getting darker by the minute, had swallowed him up completely. Stay calm, Lily. Think logically. He was just in front of you, right? So, if you keep going straight ahead, you should stumble over him sooner or later. How wonderful. There was just one problem. Where was straight ahead, exactly? And since we were on the subject of directions, where were left and right? All directions were swallowed by the roaring cataclysm around me, just as he had been swallowed. Swallowed, chewed, and digested. No, please not that. Well, if he was chewed and digested, he had to be excreted again sooner or later, right? Maybe even in one piece. And maybe you were taking this whole bloody metaphor a little too far, Lily Linton. Get your butt moving. So I got it. My butt moving, I mean. Or rather the camel's. It bleated in protest as I urged it to go faster, but we sped up, and a moment later I saw something in the sand right in front of me that made my heart jump. Footprints. They were barely discernible, and disappearing as I looked, but they were there. Faster, faster, Ambrose. Another few steps and bleats of protest later, and the sand parted, revealing a prone, black-clad figure, already half buried in the sand. Mr. Ambrose, slipping from the camel's back, I fell to my knees beside him. Mr. Ambrose, sir, are you alive? Go away, he growled. Yes, definitely alive. Why on earth should I demanded. It's not safe wandering around in this kind of tempest. Oh, you've only just figured that out, have you? I told you to stay where you were. And I didn't listen. Now come, get over here. Didn't you hear what I said? Go. He tried to push himself up, to push me away, then sank back down with a half-groan, half-cough. Go, I said. My lungs are being shredded. You have a camel. Maybe you can make it out of here alive. Leave me to die in peace. Not a chance in hell. If you're going to die, I'm going to make sure your last minutes on this earth are as miserable as possible. How very kind of you. I tried to tug at him, tried to pull him towards the camel, who was visible only as a dark form through the hay several feet away. But, opening his eyes, he stared up at me with those deep, dark, sea-colored eyes of his and shook his head. No, leave me, save yourself. I narrowed my eyes. Are you being unusually noble, or do you simply not want a girl to save your stony behind? Silence. Well, I guess I had my answer. So that's the way it is it? Well, I've got news for you, Dick, my dearling, I told him, and tugged firmly at his arm again. He slid a few inches in the right direction. I've still got a wedding ring on my finger, and so you, however temporary it may be. Do you know what that means? That means that right now I vow in the presence of God, a camel and a buttload of sand, to be your faithful partner in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, in happiness as well as in sadness, and even when you behave like a bloody arrogant idiot. I promise to hate you unconditionally, to support you in your aspirations as long as you pay me for it, and to honor and respect you as long as I get a free day off every week. This, I gave another tug, and he slid closer to the shelter of the camel, is my solemn vow. 27. How moving? You think it's moving? Then move your behind. We have to get over there, pronto. I pointed to the dark outline of the camel, who was peacefully snoozing through the sandstorm a couple of yards away. At least Ambrose will give us some shelter from the storm. You, he rasped, staggering to his feet and stumbling over to my mount, are going to change the camel's name. Oh, am I? Yes. We'll just see about that. Both of us slumped to the ground next to the very, very aptly named camel. Ambrose was not paying any more attention to us than to the grains of sand battering his impressive rump. Instead surprised, he remained perfectly cool and silent. Leaning over to the very, very aptly named camel's saddlebag, I pulled out a second headscarf and poured some of my remaining water over it. Here, I held it out to Mr. Ambrose. Put that over your mouth and nose. That is Arabian women's clothing. I will most certainly not, smack. Even over the racket of the storm, the sound of the white cloth hitting him in the face was satisfyingly audible. Leave it on if you do not want to choke to death. If you do, be my guest and remove it. What was that about honoring and respecting me? Came a muffled voice from beneath the cloth. You remember the conditions, don't you? I haven't gotten a day off since we started on this accursed trip. Reaching up, he pulled the misused headscarf off his eyes, but still left it over his mouth and nose. Leaning towards me until our faces were only inches apart, he narrowed his eyes a fraction. Well, then I have good news for you. Oh yes, indeed. He swept his arm around, gesturing at the raging tempest around us. I give you the rest of the day off. Thanks so much, sir. I'm going to the nearest cafe right away to enjoy a nice cup of tea and a piece of apple pie. You're welcome, and don't forget. His voice was cut off by a bellow of storm wind and I felt a blast of sand hit me, almost hurling me towards him. Clutching at the straps of the camel's saddlebags, I caught myself just in time. Another blast of sand hit me almost immediately. Wide-eyed, I looked up. Something was happening. Around us, the roaring had continued all the time without ceasing or abating once. But now, something altogether different was starting. All through the storm so far, directions had been swallowed, as had the landscape and any living being. But at least there had still been a sense of light, of existence, somewhere in the chaos. Now, though, the dark brown haze around us began to darken further. The gale raged with renewed force, and I bit my lower lip to suppress a cry of pain as the sand battered against my throat, stinging even through the thick material. Wet cloth or no, it was becoming more and more difficult to breathe. On the edge of my vision, things were going dark. Dimly, I wondered what was happening. Was I dying? Here, in this lonely desert, my only company a man who was as cold and hard as a block of ice. No, that's not true. You've also got the camel. Right, I was so lucky. Are you sure you're dying? Because it looks as if things aren't just going dark at the edges of your vision. They're going dark everywhere. Looking up, I sucked in a startled breath, or at least I tried to. What I actually sucked in was a startled wagon load of desert dust. What in God's name? My voice was hardly audible in my own ears. The roar of the storm had reached new heights, battering my eardrums with primeval force. What is going on? Above us, the sky, or what passed for the sky in a sunless world of swirling sands, was growing dark. And I don't mean just dark brown. I mean dark. Dark like a night without stars and with shutters nailed over all the windows. Dark like a cup of Spanish roast coffee. Dark like the color black before God thought it might be a nice idea to let there be light. Holy Moses and macaroons. From beside me, I heard Mr. Ambrose make an indistinct noise. For once, he was not complaining about my language. What is happening? How he managed to hear me over the din, I didn't know. I certainly didn't catch a single one of my own words. The storm was raging like 10,000 mad dragons. The sun is dying, he rasped. What? Look, raising his hand, he stretched it out towards where the darkness was thickest. After only a few moments, his fingers were swallowed by the storm. Despite the heat, a cold shiver ran down my back. This can't happen. A storm can't block out the sun like that. It would have to be several miles high. No, that can't happen. It simply can't. Panic rising inside me, I looked around. Things were quickly disappearing. Ambrose's head was already being eaten up by shadows. A moment more, and we would have a headless camel. And then, what then? No, this can't happen. Apparently, it can. With horror, I watched the last vestiges of light drain away. I watched as my ability to watch was stolen. The roar of the storm reached new heights, ringing like the laughter of the devil himself, spitting hot sand and darkness in our faces. The wind tore at us with malicious force, tugging so hard it threatened to rip me off the ground and away into the blackness. Bloody hell, no. Reaching out my hand, I tried to grasp something, anything, to hold onto, but my hand was swallowed by a dark maelstrom of sand. The black nothingness closed in around me, swallowing me, smothering me. Coughing, gasping for air, I lunged again. This time my left hand managed to grab something. Ouch. Oops, that something apparently was alive. A hand snapped around my arm, pulling me closer against something large and hot. I couldn't see what it was. The darkness was absolute now, but from the coarse, fury texture I assumed it was Ambrose and not Mr. Ambrose. At least I very much hoped so. The thing I still had hold of with my left hand, though. That felt like Mr. Ambrose. It felt familiar, like something I had grabbed hold of before. I would advise you, came a cool voice out of the darkness, to let go of my ear immediately. Ah, so that's what it was. Sorry. I let go, and he pulled me forward another dozen inches or so. Now I was pressed up right against the camel's fury side. Unfortunately, though, the fur wasn't long enough for my fingers to find any hold in. And Mr. Ambrose had released my arm by now. I lay there, shivering in spite of the terrible heat, a terrible feeling coming over me in the darkness. Loneliness. Not loneliness like you feel it on cold winter evenings, when your little sister is visiting with friends, and none of the other people in the house have anything meaningful to say to you. Not the loneliness of wanting things other people didn't understand. No, this was worse. It was loneliness as if there were no other people at all, only darkness, and the heat of hell, and death. The storm gave another bark of cruel, roaring laughter and buffeted me with sand out of the blackness. Again, it tugged at me ferociously, and I tried to bury my fingers in the sand in a useless effort to keep myself on the ground that seemed the only real thing in the world. From somewhere, I heard a low whimper. That's you. It's coming from your own throat. Pull yourself together, Lily. What's wrong? That voice, it sounded as if it was shouting, and yet, over the overwhelming racket of the storm in the background, it only amounted to a whisper. Whose voice was it? Surely not that of Mr. Ambrose. He'd never waste his breath on a question like that. I'm alone. I was shouting, too, but my voice, just like the other one, was barely audible. No, you're not. The camel is here. It was Mr. Ambrose. Only he could think of saying something like that at a time like this. The camel hates my guts. Intelligent animal. You're doing this on purpose. Doing what? Making me angry. I growled into the darkness. So I won't be afraid. Is it working? Yes, blast you. Indeed. That's all you've got to say. You're a bloody bank vault-like, close-mouthed bastard. I see. There was a momentary pause. Or rather, I don't see anything, in fact. Ha, that's so funny. Silence fell between us, or, at least, the absence of words. The storm raged on, gnawing at my shrinking courage, slowly suffocating me. Instinctively, my hand reached out, searching for something, someone to hold on to. Mr. Ambrose. Yes. I hesitated. Snarky comments was one thing, anger to drive the fear away was fine, but this, what I was thinking now. This was dangerous. I cleared my throat, not that anyone heard over the racket. I feel alone. Do you? I don't want to be alone right now. Silence. He didn't say a single word. I didn't even have the help of seeing his face to read his expression. But then, with Mr. Ambrose, what was there to read? Just this once, I simply had to take a chance. Cautiously, I reached out, and felt something smooth. Not skin, the fabric of his tailcoat, maybe. A sleeve. He gave a slight twitch under my sudden touch. Not letting that deter me, I moved my hand up his arm, until my fingers came to rest on his hand. Carefully, I brushed away a few grains of sand and stroked the soft skin underneath. The silence emanating from Mr. Ambrose became silenter than silent. It seemed to last forever. When he finally spoke, his voice was somewhat hoarse, probably from all the sand. I thought that sort of thing between us was reserved for the dark of the night. I tried to wet my lips, but there was no moisture left in my mouth. It looks pretty dark to me. Yet another pause. Then, yes, you're right, it does. A moment later, two strong arms came around me, pulling me closer. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk dark is a strange thing. In the dark things happen that you could never have imagined. What's that? A voice asked, or shouted, or whispered. It was difficult to tell in this world of deafening, roaring silence. The voice sounded a little like my own. That's me, my neck. Another voice out of the dark. Another shout, another whisper. His. My hands clenched tightly around his neck, pulling him close. No, I mean that smell. Has the camel had something bad for breakfast? Although the odor wasn't actually that bad. It didn't smell of camel at all. A bit harsh, true, but also interesting. I don't think so. That smell might come from the fact that you have your nose buried in my armpit. Oh. A pause. The storm roared on. It's a nice armpit. Thanks. Feels good. The voice in the dark that sounded like mine hesitated. Then, lower, so low I almost couldn't hear it myself, it said, all of you does. Silence, but only for a moment. Then his voice came out of the black nothing. So do you. Suddenly, the unseen force of the black wind around us slammed a fist of sand into me. The voice that sounded like mine cried out, and strong arms tightened around me. I sagged back, breathing hot air and dust. Oh God, I'm scared. So am I. Mr. Ambrose, scared? That couldn't be, not to mention sweet little me. I was never scared, out of principle. I knew there had to be something wrong. I knew it all along. These two voices whispering and crying in the dark, they couldn't belong to us. Not to Mr. Ambrose, and certainly not to me. Someone else had to be saying all those strange things. Come here, I heard the hymn that sounded like Mr. Ambrose say. Let me hold you. Bloody hell, now I was 250% sure someone else had to be talking. That could not, under any circumstances, in this or in any other universe, have been Mr. Rickard Ambrose talking. Yes, please. And the most certainly could not have been me answering, and yet, I felt myself being pressed against a lean, hard body in the dark, felt my face glide over cloth and sand, until my cheek was touching another face. An angular face it was, chiseled and hard in some places, soft in others. Like his lips, for example. His lips were soft, familiar. But how could they be familiar? After all, this was not Mr. Ambrose I was feeling against me, and this was not even me doing the feeling. Those were two phantoms in the dark who dared to say things we could never say, do things we would never do. Rick. Yes, Lily. I'm glad you're here. Not me talking. I'm glad you're here, too. Not him talking either. Really? Well, a touch of sarcasm entered the voice of the phantom man. Not glad that you're here in the sandstorm, in imminent danger of suffocation, obviously. I meant here with me. Yes, I meant that, too. Good. Yes. A moment of silence, a moment of roaring storm winds. Lily. Yes. If we don't survive, I want you to know that I. And the storm gave another bellow, cutting the phantom short. Maybe it was better that way. It really did sound entirely too much like Mr. Ambrose. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk when the darkness began to lighten and, by some strange coincidence, I found my face not the face of a phantom or doppelganger, but my actual face stuck against Mr. Ambrose's chest. I immediately flinched back from this suspiciously unfeminist position. He hurriedly opened his arms, which somehow had gotten tangled around me, and we slid back over the sand, eyeing each other cautiously, like a kitten and a dog caught in flagrante delicto. The roaring of the storm subsided somewhat. He cleared his throat, and sand landed in his open hand. Ahem, are you well? You mean apart from the fact that I'm bruised and parched and almost roasted? Yes, sir. Adequate. Now that was Mr. Ambrose talking. The dark brown haze around us lightened again, and we could see the faint outline of a human-camel hybrid a few dozen yards away. Yusef, is that you? The human detached himself from his camel. Ambrose Effendi, you are alive. Of course. Mr. Ambrose made a dismissive noise and waved his hand. I told you, a little bit of sand can stand in my way. Yusef's eyes flicked from Mr. Ambrose to me and back again. Underneath the sand-caked cloth covering his face, the Egyptian opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again, and bowed his head. Yes, Effendi, as you say, Effendi. Behind Mr. Ambrose, I got to my feet and, pointing to him, rolled my eyes. Then I made a very expressive gesture involving my forefinger being energetically tapped against the side of my head. Yusef was still wearing a cloth over his face, but underneath, I thought I could see something twitch. The corners of a mouth, maybe. Wait until the sandstorm has died down, then send out scouts to find the others. Yes, Effendi, they will not have gone far. They know that during a sandstorm, it is safest to stay put and seek shelter. I might have imagined it, but I thought there was just the tiniest bit of emphasis on the they in that sentence. Before Mr. Ambrose had a chance to comment on it, Yusef turned and vanished around a dune. And find that infernal camel of mine. Mr. Ambrose shouted after him. It was only a quarter of an hour later that Yusef returned, all the men and camels in tow. They looked a little dusty, but none the worse for wear. All present and correct, Effendi, he said, saluting. And there's one thing more. Mr. Ambrose halted in the process of checking the saddlebags of his errant camel. Yes. We spotted a troop of soldiers from afar. Soldiers. Egyptians and English, Effendi, although there may have been some French, too. It was difficult to make out from a distance. English, French, and Egyptians. I froze. Could it be? No, it couldn't. But it has to be. It has to be him. So Captain Carter had set out into the desert after all. I didn't say anything, and was careful not to make any sudden movements. After all, Mr. Ambrose didn't know anything about Captain Carter, and I didn't think right now would be the right time to inform him. Neither would next week be, or next year, or ever, to tell the truth. Slowly, he turned towards Yusef. I only had to take one look at the cold glint in his eyes to know I had been right not to say a word. What are they doing here? Yusef shrugged. I couldn't say, Effendi. How many? At least 100, Effendi. Probably more in the surrounding countryside. What I saw looked like one detachment of a larger force. Without moving his head, Mr. Ambrose threw a sideways look at Cream. Your assessment. The huge bodyguard reached up to tug thoughtfully at his beard, then grasped only air and scowled. They're here to take care of the bandits. Yes, and probably not in the way I wish it to be done. Yusef, how much chance do they have of catching up with us? None. The Arab smiled a brilliant white smile, sharp and crooked like an ivory saber. Some have camels, but most of the men are either on foot or on horseback, particularly the English. Those riders will soon be on foot, too, when their horses collapse from exhaustion and die. Oops. I cleared my throat. But, the riders themselves, the soldiers I mean, they won't die, right? Well, probably not. Yusef shrugged. They have a few people who seem to know what they're doing, so some of them are probably going to survive. Great, just great. The sun is already setting. Shielding his eyes with his hands, Mr. Ambrose gazed towards the horizon. We'll wait until it is dark and the stars are visible, so we can calculate our exact position. Then we'll go on. Hopefully, those soldiers will be roasted alive and won't get in our way. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk we marched on. When one day, the shadow of a craggy mountain fell on me, I realized the landscape had changed a bit. Why hadn't I noticed before? Because you've been watching Mr. Ambrose instead of hills, dunes and mountains, that's why. Well, so what if I was watching him and trying to catch every word he said? It wasn't because I was interested in him in any way. Oh no, definitely not. There was a far better reason. We were coming close to the area where the bandits were operating. He knew that, and so did I, and he knew that I knew that he still hadn't revealed even the hint of a plan of what he was going to do when the bandits attacked. Right from the beginning of our journey I had tried to worm information out of him and failed. That first time hadn't been the last. Here's how one of these conversations usually went. Me, Dick. Mr. Ambrose, cold silence. Me, all right, Rick. Mr. Ambrose, yes. Me, you know how you said you were going to let us be ambushed by the bandits? Mr. Ambrose, yes. Me, well, what about it? I mean, you can't really have meant that, can you? Mr. Ambrose, no. Me, no as in, no, I can't really have meant that. Mr. Ambrose, no as in, no, I can have meant it, and did mean it. Me. But, we'll all be sorted. Mr. Ambrose, indeed. Me. You can't want us all to be sorted. Mr. Ambrose, indeed. Me. Tell me what your plan is. Mr. Ambrose, cold silence. Me. You do have a plan, don't you? Mr. Ambrose, cold silence. Me. Bloody hell, will you open your mouth for once in your lifetime? Mr. Ambrose, even colder silence. Now, taking conversations like that into account, is it surprising that I had a tendency to glare at him, and that I tried to listen in on every single word he spoke? I'm not a very self-centered person as a rule, but I like my neck uncut, thank you very much. And I wasn't about to let Mr. Ambrose's stubbornness stop me from keeping it that way. We were just riding through a shadowed valley between two bare hills when I decided to make another attempt at the fortress. Driving Ambrose closer to Mr. Ambrose, I cleared my throat. Nothing happened. I cleared my throat again. Do you have a cold? Mr. Ambrose asked without looking at me. If I had, it would be from your voice and not the climate. No, I glared at him. I'm not putting up with this any longer. I'm not walking blindly into a trap. If you have got a plan, fine. Share. If you haven't got one, then at least admit it. After what you did back in the sandstorm, I wouldn't be surprised if you thought you could just march right through anything and anyone because you're so high and mighty. But at least admit it. And if you do have a plan after all, I want to bloody know what it is. I want to know what you plan to do when we meet the bandits. Mr. Ambrose growled. Yes, that's exactly it. I nodded. So are you going to tell me? But Mr. Ambrose wasn't paying any attention to me. He turned around, signaling to Yusuf. Bandits. There, bandits. Slowly, the realization sank in. He wasn't talking to me anymore. Mr. Ambrose raised his arm, and I followed it with my wide-eyed gaze. There, on top of the nearest hill, stood a figure, its silhouette sharply contrasting against the burning blue sky. My heart picked up the pace. More figures appeared, right and left, mounted and unmounted, until we were surrounded by a virtual forest of men. Oh, I swallowed. I guess our talk will have to wait. Raising their sabers, the bandits gave a guttural war cry and charged down the hillside. Camel kaboom. I expected Mr. Ambrose to charge at the bandits single-handedly. I expected bullets to fly and gallons of blood to flow. I expected a terrifying battle. What I didn't expect was Mr. Ambrose sliding from his camel, falling to his knees and throwing his rifle away. Please, please don't hurt us. We are just merchants. We mean nobody any harm. Please don't hurt us. I stared at him open-mouthed. The foremost bandit, the leader, to judge by the arrogant smirk on his face, pulled his camel to a halt in front of Mr. Ambrose and spat on the ground. English pig, so much for your famous, stiff upper lip. Tell your men to throw their weapons away. Men, Mr. Ambrose called, his voice trembling, yes, actually trembling with fear. Throw your weapons away, immediately. These people won't harm us if we don't resist. The bandit laughed. I didn't say anything about that, pig, out of my way, but... Mr. Ambrose didn't get any further. Driving his camel forward, the bandit leader rode directly at him, and Mr. Ambrose had just enough time to throw himself out of the way. Riding directly into the center of the valley, the leader raised his gun over his head and shot into the sky, silencing everyone. All right, men, he hollered, gather up the weapons, drive the camels to the east of the valley, and those English pigs to the west. So far, I had watched the whole proceedings with mouth agape. But now my stunned brain jumped into action. I drove my camel forward and bent down to pick up Mr. Ambrose's fallen rifle from the ground. Hey, you, a shot rang out over my head. Stop that. I was just about to ride myself and return fire if I could figure out how a rifle worked in 3 seconds. That is when a hard hand grabbed my wrist and pulled me down from the camel. A moment later I was flat on the ground, engaged in Mr. Ambrose's arms. Forgive my wife, he pleaded with the bandits. She's had a heat stroke, she's not right in the head. And into my ear, he hissed in his usual, cold, commanding tone, if you don't keep still, I will knock you out, understand? I froze. That didn't sound like the voice of a defeated man. That sounded suspiciously like a man with a plan. Your wife, the bandit barked a laugh. You've got one woman among you all, and she's the only one who is man enough to pick up a rifle. That is a good joke. So much for the famed courage of the English. Now, do as you're told. Get over to the west of the valley, or I'll shoot you down here and now. Rising to his feet and pulling me up with him, Mr. Ambrose led me over to the west side of the valley, all the while keeping a tight hold on me. Bandits rode around us and all the others in circles, herding everybody off to the west, shouting, move. Do as we tell you, and you won't get hurt. Nobody was fooled by the show they were putting on. I could see it in my companions' faces. They knew what awaited them. All the previous caravans had been massacred. This one would be, too. The bandits were just dangling the possibility of life in front of us so we wouldn't resist. And so far, it seemed to be working. Or was it? I caught a glimpse of the cold, calculating look in Mr. Ambrose's dark eyes, and suddenly wasn't so sure anymore. But then the look was gone again, replaced by abject terror and whining submission. Please, he begged the bandits, please don't take everything. I invested all my whole fortune into this caravan. If you take everything, you'll leave me a beggar. Please. The bandits roared with laughter. Not content with that, one of them stepped up behind my dear employer and booted him soundly in the behind. Flying forward, he landed face first in the dirt. My lips twitched. Well, now, even if I was going to die today, maybe it was worth it just for having seen this. Please, getting up again, he slipped through the row of bandits and hurried to one of the camels they had herded together. Please, don't take this one. Take all the others, but not this one. The laughter subsided. Suddenly, anticipation crackled in the air. All eyes flew to the camel beside Mr. Ambrose. Why, brows furrowed, the bandit leader drove his mount towards my employer, stopping only a yard or two away. What's so special about this particular camel? I don't know. Just please, leave me just this one. You can have all the others, but please. Is there a treasure in the saddlebags? Gold, silver? Fear flickered over Mr. Ambrose's face. No, nothing at all. The saddlebags are empty. Please, don't take it. Please, you can take all the others, but please. Out of my way, you sniveling worm. Sliding down from his camel, the bandit leader marched towards Mr. Ambrose and shoved him out of the way. He was so intent on the saddlebags that he didn't notice Mr. Ambrose crawling away rather fast for someone who, just a moment ago, seemed to have been determined to protect this particular camel. Now, let's see what's in here. Unfastening the buckles, the bandit leader opened the first saddlebag, and the camel exploded. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. I must admit, it took me quite by surprise. I'm from Westminster. We don't often meet exploding camels in our neighborhood. But, here in this place, things seem to be different. Apparently, one exploding camel wasn't enough. The others wanted to join the fun, and the moment the fire of the first explosion reached the next bleating furry molehill on legs, it blew up too. In a few fiery seconds of chaos, the entire east side of the valley was blown to bits, including every bandit and camel in it. A moment later someone shoved me from behind, and I fell to the ground. Looking up, I saw Yusuf standing protectively over me, a rifle suddenly in his hand. Where the hell had he gotten that? Other men of our party were pulling out rifles, too, and aiming. Had they had hidden weapons all along? Attack! His ice-cold command drew my eyes back to Mr. Ambrose. He was rolling over and pulling out a revolver from his tailcoat pocket. Bam! The first bullet caught the nearest bandit in the head and hurled him off his camel. Attack! Get them, men! Kill them all! H's men seemed more than glad to follow that order. Bullets whizzed over my head like a swarm of deadly bees. Screams rang out, and moments later, the half-dozen bandits that had been surrounding us fell dead to the ground. Taking up a formation like a professional regiment, our caravan started firing at the rest. Not that there were many left. Most of them, gathered around the camels when they blew up, had been ripped apart by the explosions. The few who were left didn't run, though. A trap, shouted someone over the racket of the gunfire. It's a trap, kill the English pigs, or Roddy will have your head. I spat out sand and raised my head. Roddy, who the hell is Roddy? Yusuf grabbed me, shoved me down again and fired another shot at the bandits. How should I know? The chief leader of the bandits, maybe. Stay down. Give me a gun, and I won't have to stay down. The Effendi gave strict orders that you were not to be given a weapon under any circumstances. Oh, he did he? Sooner or later, we were going to have a chat about that. Yes, and I agree, with the bandits, we have one deadly danger to face already, we don't need another. Now stay down. Bullets shot across the valley in deadly droves. From what I could see whenever I managed to raise my head long enough to catch a glimpse, the bandits were holding their own. Once, I saw Mr. Ambrose at the other end of the line, commanding his men and shooting. But even his cold glare can drive the bandits away. We aren't winning, are we? I asked Yusuf while he was reloading. Have patience. That's all very well for you to say. You're not lying face first in the dirt. You won't have to lie down much longer. Look up. You just told me to stay down. Well, things are changing, Hannum. Look up. I did, just as the sound of more guns joined the cacophony of battle. Past all the smoke and shouting men and blazing guns, past everything up on the hills in the east, I saw riders appearing. A dozen, two, no, soon there were more than that. They had to number at least 100, all sitting on camelback, and all shooting at our enemies. What in God's name is going on? I yelled over the noise of gunfire. You didn't think the explosives in the saddlebags were just a trap, did you? Yusuf laughed. The Effendi never does anything for just one reason. The explosion was a signal. More men have been following us ever since we left Alexandria, far enough away so nobody would notice, but close enough to hear a herd of exploding camels. I was slightly worried for a time that they had lost us in the sandstorm, but then the scouts made contact yesterday. He knew there were reinforcements, and he didn't tell me. Yes. I'm going to kill him. Feel free to try, Hannum. As he spoke, more men started appearing to the west and the north. At a glance, I would have said they had to number at least 300. That bastard, that bloody, stone-faced, close-mouthed bastard. Bandits were falling all over the place, shot in the back or in the sides. The ones left still alive cowered down in the sand, shooting wildly in all directions, their eyes wide with terror. For a supposedly timid caravan of traders, we were proving entirely too tough and nasty. Those who still had live camels underneath them kicked the animals into motion and darted towards the last few hills around the valley that were still free of attackers. I scrambled to my feet. Bloody hell, we can't let them get away like that. I glared at Yusuf. Give me a gun. He shook his head. I'm sorry, Hannum, I have my orders. Shooting him another glare, I bent down to pick up a good-sized pebble from the ground. Good riddance. I hurled it after a retreating bandit. It squarely hit his camel on the rump. Go bugger a banana. Only a few dozen yards away, I spotted Ambrose, the camel version, still loitering well away from the craters that had swallowed fellow members of his species. The foxy old bugger. So he had survived, had he? Excellent. I started to run. Hannum, wait. A shout came from behind me, but I didn't listen to Yusuf. I wasn't really in the mood to listen to anyone right now.